Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod, and I have a guest today that many people thought would never be a part of this podcast, but they've all requested. So for many years, I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. So, special guest.
What's going on, you guys? Jeremy Buendia, four-time men's physique Olympia champion, former Evogen athlete, and somebody that's looked up and very appreciative to Hany Rambod for all these years, and we have a lot to talk about, a lot to catch up on, and I'm excited to be here. I didn't think I was going to be here, like you said. So
yeah, the story actually goes that we ran into each other last night at the Nationals. We were in the lobby, and somebody comes over, grabs me with the shoulder, gives me a hug, and I was like, who is this? And then I was like, oh, it's Jeremy. And obviously, we hadn't spoken for many years, up until you getting ready for the 2023 Olympia. And then when everything happened, because a lot of people don't know what happened. And I know that this podcast, a lot of people want to know what happened. And I think this is part podcast, part therapy, I think for me at least. But I don't know how you feel about it. So we're kind of just putting it out there that we didn't actually talk at all before this about what we're going to talk about. But I did feel like when we spoke yesterday, Ariel Kutch was there, again, Barry guy, good guy that we both know really well. Time. Yeah, know very well. And we were just talking about, Mike Rattini was there from Golds. He also coaches, and one of the things that we were just kind of like shooting the shit, but it was a very chill conversation. Obviously I can feel your energy's in a different place. My energy's in a different place. So there wasn't, after 5-6 years of us not working together, and both on the Evogen side as well as on the coaching side, there was a lot of shit that has happened, but it's in a way where a lot of water under the bridge, in my opinion, because people are like, when are you going to talk to Jeremy again? What's going to happen? I said, it's just, when it's time, it's time. And it was one of those things where in 2019, 18, 19, those are some hard years, because in 18 you lost. And that was just as hard for me as it was for you. And I think that that's where it all started. But we can talk about so many things. But I guess in the beginning, just so that the people who don't know you, that are kind of newer or don't know the backstory, Jeremy and I met through the fact that he was from Northern California. And I think you were like 21 or 22.
Yeah, 22.
22 years old. And you were literally one of the first guys that were starting to come off the block in men's physique, because it just started. And I believe you were even doing bodybuilding as a teenager.
Yeah, you commentated my first NPC show.
Right,
in
right.
Contra Costa in Hayward.
Well, I was there at the Contra Costa. I ended up being the MC for John Lindsay, and he asked me to do that. So from time to time, I would do it. Not very many shows, but few and far in between. And you came up to me and you said, dude, you actually were the MC of the show. You were up on the podium when I competed. And I think you showed me a video too. And you were competing as a teenager in bodybuilding. And I believe you were was that the one you went against Boston Lloyd?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And it was like you went up against Boston Lloyd. And I believe you won the overall, right? Yeah. And you won the overall at that show. But again, I didn't know you then. But when we fast forward, like maybe 2 or 3 years, and you were doing men's physique, and men's physique had just started up, and you had gotten, I think, your pro card right after we talked, myself, you, Nick, right, about You were like
It was
looking to be an athlete.
right after my pro card, because it was right before my pro debut.
Your
They
pro
signed
debut.
me.
That's what it
Yeah.
was. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But
So it
I
was.
had been taking Evogen products because they got brought into one of our local supplement stores up there. And I remember trying the Selkim for the first time, the EVP, the old first edition grape that tasted like butt.
yeah.
But it works.
Medicinal.
Yeah. And I remember I told you I took the products, and I lived in Northern California, and it was only an hour and a half drive to the office in Evogen in San Jose, and we connected there. And
Yeah. Yep. And that's when we gave you a extra large shirt because that was the
I
only.
came in wearing a Suns Out, Guns Out orange tank top into the Evogen office, and then you gave me a triple XL Steve Kuklo shirt, and I was so excited to put that shirt on and hang down to my knees, but I was so pumped to be part of the Evogen team.
It was crazy because I remember I was talking to Nick and he goes, "This is a new division, and we could always use somebody." And I go, "Yeah. I wonder what this is going to happen, with this division." And we have that's local. And when your name popped up that you were interested, I said, "Well, again, being me, I was like, well, has he taken the products before?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's taken the products before." And I can't remember who it was. There was somebody that we were talking to about you that had kind of connected us. And I can't remember.
I can't remember who it was either.
No.
It was somebody, though.
Yeah, it was somebody that I knew that knew you and was like vouching for you.
Yeah, that's going to bother me that I can't recall who that was.
Right.
It wasn't Omar, was it? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It wasn't Omar, was it?
I don't know. I don't know if it was Omar. It was somebody, but there was somebody there, and then we got the connection, and then you came to the office. And again, the office back then, God, what year was that?
2013.
2013, the office there.
It was,
was
May or June. No, it was June 2013.
it was in its original spot, which we had one roll-up door. It was maybe, I don't know, 3,000 square feet.
If that.
Yeah. It was small.
To see where it is now, man. I walk into this place and I'm just like, man, that little hole in the wall office that started out, 2013, that very first expo, the San Jose Fit Expo, a 10 by 10 booth, one table, and then to see what it's blown up to. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with the fact that we were also able to finally grow by leaving the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, which is all tech, and being able to do the things that I know we could do, was stretch our legs, because I would always complain about it, but it was really hard to be able to make a change and want to move. But obviously, as everybody knows, during the pandemic is when we decided to move the company and move the family. But when we met and you got the supplements and you told me, like, no, I already take this, that was my number one concern. And then I said, okay, we'll see what happens. Got you literally from Kuklo's stash, because Steve Kuklo was one of my first athletes. And I think the smallest size we had was XL or XX. I think
I was a medium back then.
I barely. What'd you weigh?
155 maybe?
Yeah. So 155. And I think it was an XL, but it was literally down to your knees. And it wasn't the tapered XL. It was like a regular box shirt. And the crazy thing about it was that it was like, okay, we'll see what happens with this division, right? It was just supplements, right? I don't think we paid you anything. I think it was
I
just...
had a little, you gave me I think it was $250 was my first contract.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Wow. We were generous. I literally had no idea what was going on with that division. And you were going to get ready for your pro debut, I believe.
That was the Greater Gulf States.
Right. And that was Louisiana?
Yep.
And then signed you. You were already taking Evogen. You were already following a lot of the FSC7 stuff too, because I think you were following a lot of that because it was so popular, right? Around that 2010, 9, 10, 11, all those years. And then you're convinced me. And again, you're very, very passionate.
Yeah.
Very passionate. And because everybody was worried that anybody that was going to be in this division wasn't going to be fully that bodybuilding hardcore mentality. It was going to be more of that junior varsity mentality, because nobody knew what it was going to turn into, because it was brand spanking new. And one thing I realized about you was that you were a bodybuilder that became a men's physique competitor. And that was something that was really, I think, part of your success, because you trained legs. You trained just like, you know, a bunch of times you trained with Phil, you know, when I was coaching Phil back in the day, and you'd come in and you'd train with us. And you were amped to do it. You weren't like, kind of like, okay, this is all I do because I'm men's physique, and I don't have to do legs because I'm wearing board shorts, or I don't like to flex when we do flex sets, right? You were eating it all up.
I loved it.
Yeah. And you had won, and the story goes, you won that show, qualified for the Olympia, and then you did the Olympia. And I don't know, did you work with anybody with that first Olympia?
Yeah, kind of.
You were just like, kind of like had some help here and there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of the things that I remember was that you said, could you help me? And I said, look, I don't know anything about that division. I'd have to see what it even looks like. I haven't even been to a show. So the first show I saw was when you took second to Mark Anthony at the Olympia. And I was like, wow, this is kind of what this men's physique's all about. And then I said, what are the strengths and weaknesses for all these athletes? And obviously with you, with your joints, that was kind of one of those things that I was like very impressed with. But I'm like, wow, he's kind of small. I mean, I think your first Olympia, you're 152 pounds?
Yeah, about maybe 157.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you're in the mid 150s, let's call it. And then we ended up going back and forth. And you said, well, look, I've proven myself, but I know with your help, you can kind of go up. You know, we can kind of move up. But
I wanted it. I wanted to win.
big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could see. But I think that, you know, also understanding your personality, and you know me, especially with all the years that I coached you, in the beginning, it was like trying to figure out the formula, right? And when I say formula, like, how do I work through with somebody and be able to make sure that I can keep them even keel, keep their stress level down, focus on being able to see. What's so funny?
I made your job really hard.
Well, I think as now that you're older, because you're how old now?
I'm 34.
You're 34.
Yeah.
We started when you were 22.
Yeah.
And I think that you mentioned something last night, and I didn't really realize it until you really put it out there. You were a young 22 also. It wasn't, you know, there's some people that are 22, and then there's younger 22. And I think that that younger 22 comment you made yesterday puts things in perspective, because I felt like, what did you mean by that?
Just my mindset, my internal age, the way my thought processes were, and the way I interpreted people, the way I communicated with people, maybe even the way I saw myself. You know, I stepped into royalty when I signed with you guys. You know, I was at the table with you, Jay, and Phil. You know, I had a lot to prove. I knew I had a lot of room to try to catch up. And being that young and sitting at that table, though, made my head pretty big. You know, I think that was one of the biggest things, was just getting a little too far ahead of myself. And, you know, I that same mentality, though, also pushed me to achieve what we achieved together.
Yeah.
You know, I had a lot of drive. I had a lot of aspirations to try to get on the level that you guys are at. I pushed myself really hard to get there. But yeah, man, I just wasn't mature enough to handle the success, the fame, the money, all of those things. And, you know, even up until we separated, I still feel like my mindset was still young, even at 27 years old, when things started to fall apart.
Right.
You know, and then I'm kind of jumping ahead. We have a lot of years to cover between now and the beginning and the end. But, you know, it wasn't up until a few years ago where I really started to understand why everything happened the way it happened, and really kind of being able to pick myself apart and look back and see where I went wrong, and how and why people looked at me the way they looked at me. You know, I was so busy pointing fingers at everybody else for so many years that I didn't take a look in the mirror until a certain point where I was left with pretty much nothing and no one, you know, including my family. And you know how rough that was for me towards the end. You know, I didn't didn't have anybody. People that were around me weren't even for me. They were trying to take from me.
Yeah.
And you tried to protect me as much as you could, but I just wasn't listening to anybody. I thought I had it all figured out.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I was talking to Mike about this is I had to go through everything I went through to be the man I am today, to be sitting here with you right now. I had to go through all those struggles, and it sucked. It really did. I wish I didn't do the things that I did, but at the same time, like, I'm grateful I went through all those hard times, and I'm grateful I made those mistakes so I can learn from those, especially now that I have kids. You know, my daughter's going to be 4, my son's 10 weeks old, and, you know, I went through a lot of hard lessons that hopefully they won't have to go through personally, because I'll be able to guide them and stop them from making those poor decisions or saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And, you know, it's made me a man from learning from my mistakes. And of course, I wish I didn't make them, but part of life, you know, hard lessons have to be learned sometimes. And I've always been one that has to figure it out for myself.
When you put that kind of pressure on yourself too, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. You were just where you're sitting right now a week ago with Seth Ferrosi, and he went through something that was very, very high pressure, ended up having to buckle, had a lot of home life problems. And I think that there's a takeaway here. It's how you deal with them, right? And I know that your childhood, there was a lot, because you told me. I know that they had you on medication at a young age. I know you've talked about this, so I'm not putting something out there that you haven't already spoken about in prior podcasts, because that was the other thing that I was always trying to do, is I was always trying to keep your information confidential. And until you started talking about it, then people came and talked to me, then I'd acknowledge it. They're like, yeah, you know, mental health, right? And was this something you were struggling with the whole time when you were growing up?
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of mental health issues since I was like 4 or 5 years old. You know, it started out like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I remember I had all my toy cars. They'd be lined up along the side of my room in certain order, certain colors, by size. And if anybody messed with my cars or moved it a little bit, I would know, and I would freak out. I went through a phase where if my hair wasn't perfect, I would spend hours on my hair in the morning before I go to school, because not one hair can be off. I went through a phase when I was in first grade where I had an obsession with washing my hands. I couldn't touch anything because things were dirty. I would wash my hands to the point that my hands were raw. My fingernails fell off. And then that evolved into a school phobia. I had really tough time going to school and leaving my parents, to the point where I would take off running from my classroom. I think it was Alvin and Expressway, actually, or Blossom, one of those busy streets in San Jose. I remember my parents dropped me off at kindergarten. I busted out the door and I chased their car down the road on one of those busy streets. And yeah, man, I ended up getting put on Prozac when I was like 6 years old. And, you know, I managed to cope, but it was stuff that I dealt with all the way through. I was on antidepressant medication until I was a senior in high school. And then, you know, when I graduated, I didn't want to have that stigma. I'm on medication. I started smoking weed, and I thought that would help me out. And, you know, it just kind of evolved into one thing after another for me, into, you know, from OCD to an anxiety disorder, into a panic anxiety disorder. So we've just kind of been trying to figure out what the issues have been, you know, getting a right diagnosis. I've taken a lot of, you know, mental health tests to figure out if I have split personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder. And actually, I know you mentioned it last night. I've never they've never been diagnosed with bipolar disorder or borderline personality disorder. We thought I did. We thought I had all the symptoms and whatnot, but the doctor they said, no, you're not that. You suffer from panic, anxiety, depression. That's what they said I have.
And that's back then or now?
No, still no. I'm transparent. I'm on medication. I've been on medication the past two years. And I think that helped a lot, because I fell into a deep, dark hole in 2020 when everything fell apart for me. You know, I lost everything. I lost all my sponsors. I got publicly humiliated. It was a tough time. And then not only that, you know, I got my wife pregnant, my fiance at the time, and now my wife, she got pregnant. And, that was a scary time because I didn't have anything. When my daughter was born, I was down to like last $10,000 in my bank account with hardly any money coming in. And it was really rough, really rough. And, I managed to pull it together. I did. I did make a lot of changes in my life, cleaned a lot of things up. I really started digging deeper into my faith and trying to reestablish a relationship with God. And I really feel he pulled me out of a hole. And I remember a specific time I was in my garage and things were just falling apart. I remember it was a rainy day outside and I was looking out, the trees were blowing, and I was just like at the end. I didn't know what to do. And, I pretty much was on my knees at rock bottom. And I was like, I got to give it up to you. There's nothing else I can do. I've tried it on my own. It doesn't work. Nothing's working right now. I have nowhere else to turn. So I turned to Christ. And, I'm still working on my faith and working on my walk with God every single day. Every night I pray for him to draw me closer to him, so to straighten my path and, fix the thoughts that go through my head and make sure that my actions are the way I want to represent being a follower of Christ. It's important. And every time I get close to God, he elevates my life in every way. And that's something that I feel I've battled with is, going in and out of my relationship with God, getting close to him and then drifting away, getting close to him and then drifting away. And that's something I've been working on, is not letting myself drift as far, trying to stay as close as possible, because there's a correlation between my relationship with God and how my life is playing out. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that unfold time and time again. When I'm close to him, things are good. When I fall apart, when I fall away from him, things fall apart. And there's no way of turning my back on that anymore. I know where my happiness and fulfillment comes from. It's the things that matter in life. And I was thinking about last night, we were talking about, just seeing Evagen and where you're at right now and seeing the success that you've had, through everything, not just financially, but, finances too, the money. I'm not where I could have been financially. I have things played out differently. But at the same time, I valued so much of those materialistic things, money, cars, girls, everything, so much earlier on in my career, that the important things like my family, my relationship with God, my relationships with my friends and people around me, that all fell apart. So it was my understanding now, and the way I feel is no amount of money will ever give you that fulfillment or the purpose that a relationship with God will give you. And, I'm very happy with my life right now, and I'm doing a lot better for myself than a lot of people probably think I am. Mm-hmm. And I'm very content. I have a beautiful family, got 2 amazing kids, an amazing wife. I live in a very nice home. I got 2 nice cars. I don't drive a Lamborghini anymore, but I don't want to drive a Lamborghini anymore. I don't want that attention. I don't want to put my value into those things. My life is so much different than the way it used to be. I was telling somebody at the show that, it's different for me coming back and being involved in the sport, because it brings back a lot of old feelings. And, mm-hmm. When I walked away, when I got kicked out pretty much of the sport in 2019, and I felt whenever I walked around, people were talking about me, have a finger at me or looking down on me. There was just a lot of negative emotions that were tied to the bodybuilding industry. And when I moved back up to Northern California, I distanced myself from all of that. I got a very small group of friends. I work out at a small gym. My buddies aren't big Instagram influencers. They're just great guys, mm-hmm. And it's just a completely different outlook that I have on life right now. And I know that as long as I'm pursuing the things that God has for me, he's given me in my life, the blessings he's given in my life, that he's going to take care of me. And he always has. There's never been a moment in my life that, no matter how bad things have gotten, he's never let me out to dry, no matter how bad things have gotten. I've always had a roof over my head, always been able to provide for my family, always put food on the table, and he's blessed me. And I had to lose everything in order for him to reveal the blessings that he has given me.
Well, I think that your journey has been a long, I don't know how to even break it down. It's like there's been a lot of highs and lows,
It's life, though, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I think that obviously emotionally, I was a part of a lot of that, right? Because I'm so tied to my athletes. I'm so tied, at that point to you and being able to, like, I remember your dad pulling me aside and saying, I think it was the first Olympia we won together. And he said to me, he goes, thank you for raising my child. And I go, what do you mean by that? And he said something along the lines of, he's like, I did it up until he was in high school, and you did it when he became a man. Because I don't remember if it was you or him that said something like, I felt like he was going to either be locked up or he could be dead with the people he was running with. So that was a lot of pressure for me. But as I'm a person who wants to take on it,
My parents love you. They still do this day.
they're
love you.
they're really nice people. Your parents are very, very sweet, and I know that it was very difficult. And then they would tell me that they said Jeremy was a very difficult child, and it was one of those things that it was like, okay, we have a 15-year age difference, not a little, but not super crazy huge difference. But at the same time, I'm 16, I believe. I'm gonna be 50 in a couple weeks here. And you're 34, but again, because you were so young, and when you became successful, the hard thing about it is that we're in a narcissistic sport. Narcissism runs rampant in it. And being able to try to keep someone motivated where they feel good, because that's what you feed off of, is the compliments and all of that. But at the same time, trying to keep you grounded was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire career because of your highs and lows, right? And I still, am always trying to understand what those highs and lows were and what was causing them. Because sometimes you would drink and you would just go off the hinges, right? And we're talking for years, right, as us working together and going around the world. And there were some painful moments. And again, being, like I said, this is a podcast. This is for you and I haven't spoken really in 5 years, right? And so since 2019, I think Ironman is the last time we really spoke.
Was that shortly after the LA Fit Expo?
Yeah. So that would have been January, February? Yeah. So I guess this next couple months would have been 6 years.
Yeah.
Right? So it's almost 6 years. And it really affected me because I really felt like I almost failed as a father figure to you, almost like Uncle Hany, because as you know, I try to help every aspect of your life. And it's a lot of weight to bear. And I remember guys like Phil and everybody was like, dude, just you have to try to group your thoughts and your emotions. But I'm like, no, I got to try to help him. I got to try to help him. And 1 minute you're good, the next minute not so good, sometimes really bad. And I felt like with all of those things, as painful as they were, I'd always sweep them under the rug. And I feel like everything is coming full circle because now, since I, announced my retirement from the coaching part, and I'm still training, like I said, helping people train, doing a lot of those things, but not taking on those burdens because, again, I didn't know how to differentiate those. I'm sure a lot of those coaches do, but that wasn't something that it was a la carte for me. It was
the coaches aren't doing what you did for me and for the other athletes. For our relationship, I feel the coaching was a very small part of it. It was a much more personal relationship. It was family. That's what you were to me. So that's why it was so hard. And that's why I beat myself up for so many years for the way things ended between you and I, because it was my fault. And it sucked, man. It sucked for a long time. I didn't forgive myself for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. And I think that, you know, it was hard for me to forgive you for a long time because there was so much bitterness and venom that was spit, you know, during the time. And I think that after the 2019 thing, there was a lot of insecurity.
Yeah.
And I think that this point of the entire journey has been highs and lows due to insecurity. Mm-hmm. Whether it's winning, I mean, dude, we almost got in a fist fight in Australia because you had saw
That's right. Yeah.
what you had saw Sadiq was being driven around in a Lambo, and you thought that he had gotten a Lambo, and you had been Mr. Olympia now, you know, men's physique Olympia winner, I should call it, for a year, and we were going into Australia, but you were so triggered that I remember it was, you couldn't like hold your rage back. And when you showed me the picture, I go, he's not driving, he's being driven in his car. It's not his car. But because of optics, and, you know, Sadiq was just trying to be cool. Mm-hmm. And he posted something. But at the time, just trying to calm you down. And it was like, I couldn't understand the rage. And I don't know if that came from insecurity. I don't know what that came from. But is that something that you feel like you've been able to kind of control at this point?
And I still deal with certain days where I wake up and I don't feel myself, but I've been able to handle the outbursts a lot better, not raging on people, being able to control that a lot better and being able to catch myself a lot sooner when I start feeling those emotions. And I attribute that to my wife as well. My wife is a very understanding person, and she's been somebody that's been able to help me become better and by being understanding and not adding fuel to the fire when things get bad, and she's able to talk me off the ledge. But also just the love that we have for each other and our family, I knew I had to grow up and be better for them. You know, I'm not a kid anymore. I can't say, oh, I'm going to fix things when I become an adult. I'm 34 now, and I think I did a lot of that when I was in my 20s. I used my age as an excuse. I'm just young and stupid. Can't say that at 34 years old anymore.
Yeah, well, the thing that I would always think about, especially now more than even back then, is there a chemical imbalance that's occurring at a very, very high rate because of anabolics, right? Because you hear now guys that are like, Mike Israetel talks about how like his inner rage. Mm-hmm. And now when I hear him talk about that, and I'm going, wow, that was Jeremy. Jeremy got, like, all he saw was red.
See, the thing is, I saw red before I even got into bodybuilding. That's the thing. It's like it's hard for me to blame the steroids on it, but I'm sure it didn't help.
Sure.
That's for sure. I know there was one time that I ran some trend, and you're like, you got to get off that.
Right.
Now.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, I handled my last prep a lot better. I mean, everybody can attest to that was around me. So I think as I gotten older, you know, I've been able to handle it a lot better, and you know, yeah.
Well, do you think that also when you look and you contribute not just the compounds, but when you sit there and talk about the emotional roller coaster, because you're also drinking, right? Was that something that also made it worse?
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't like drinking during the week and stuff. I would party on the weekends.
No.
Wasn't that an alcoholic or anything like that. I would drink on the weekends and party, and
right.
You know, I was doing party drugs and stuff like that too. And I would get that super high from being messed up, and then the following days, I mean, you just crash. Your endorphins, your dopamine levels are crashed, and
are all over the place.
So, you know, and adding that on top of what my already chemical imbalances that I have dealt with, you know, it was a recipe for a disaster, and that's what happened time and time again with me. You know, I don't drink like that anymore. I haven't been drunk in I don't know how long. I'll have a couple drinks, but haven't been drunk probably in 4 or 5 years.
Well, I think that's probably a lot to do with being more stable than you were.
Yeah.
Because again, you wouldn't drink all the time, but when you did drink, you would binge drink, right?
Yeah.
You were going.
I drank to get messed up, yeah.
And you'd get violent. Mm-hmm. You'd like somebody would look at you wrong, and you're like, "I'm gonna go knock that dude out," right? And so I think that the whole thing is that when people ask me about how was it when we were working together, and I'm always going to say the same thing. I think you have an amazing heart because in its core, you really value people. You really care about people. But I felt like you weren't happy with yourself.
I agree.
And I feel like those things that these people that are listening to this or watching this podcast on YouTube can be able to understand and realize, whether it's themselves or whether it's their loved ones, how abusive people can get because of that inner anger.
Yeah.
And how they have to be able to try to do whatever they can to try to create peace and try to be able to be more tranquil, because there's a lot of pressure and that creates anxiety that then can accumulate to high amounts of stress, and you end up becoming that person you don't want to be.
Yeah.
And some people are much more chill about it because they're naturally much more calm. But like you said, you're already naturally angry. Mm-hmm. You naturally, with all the things that were going on in your childhood that weren't dealt with. And I feel that when people listen to this, you have to realize if you have those types of traits, you should really understand that drinking, recreational drugs, these compounds can make you into the devil.
Yep.
And I feel like those are things where when we did try to have those conversations, you obviously were just like shutting them down because you're like, it's not from that.
Yeah.
And that's what made it really hard, because we would travel all around the world together, and there was days where we were just like amazing, things were great, and then the next day something would trigger you, and then again, I don't know if you've taken something or you've done something, or you drank the night before after we got done with the expo or something, and then all of a sudden the next day it's like, oh shit, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people that asked me, and I said, I don't think you realize, because it was always, roses and unicorns and rainbows on the outside. So when we used to shoot our YouTube videos and doing all this FSD7 stuff, we're doing ladders, we're doing this, it was always just the highlight reel. It was never about showing any of the like a family, very similar to a family, and where everything looks really great and it's like the table is set and everybody's getting along, but they don't know behind the scenes there's a lot of shit that was going on and how difficult that really was. And so with all those things being said, you and I went through 4 really good Olympia wins. They were awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember you got your tattoo. I think it was after, what, second or third?
I think it was the second one.
And I was like, what'd you do? And you're like, I got a E-Vision double helix on my neck. And I was like, that's a sticker, right? Like it's a temporary tattoo.
Yep.
And you're like, no. And, and I mean, to this day, it's like, I still again, I don't have tattoos.
Yeah.
It's my company. I don't have tattoos. But I'm also one of those people who change my mind about a lot of things. So I'm like, I don't want any permanent.
You can go after this and you can get a matching one if you want to.
Well, now we got the new one. We got the new logo. There's a new logo on there with the like you saw in the front desk. It's a more updated logo after 17 years. Believe it or not, it's going to be 17 years here next month.
I still have it, man. I've covered up a lot of tattoos over the years, but I haven't covered up the E-Vision. It's for a good reason. Some of the best years of my life were with the E-Vision and my memories with you and traveling the world. I can't cover that up. There's no covering that up because it's such a huge part of my life. I'm very grateful for. I wouldn't have been able to experience the things I experienced in my life if it wasn't for you. So I'm very grateful for that. And there's memories I'm going to hold on forever. There's memories I'm going to tell my kids, my grandkids. We got videos of it to show.
Yeah.
It was such an amazing time, despite the rough times that we had. We had even greater times than the hard times.
Yeah, we had much better times than we were bad, but the bad was so bad that it was one of those things where it compounded at the very end is where things got really sideways. And for those that, again, I get hit up about this all the time. A little bit lesser now in the last year or two, but at least for the first 3 years that we didn't talk, it was a lot until you put out a video getting ready for the Olympia last year. And it was like an apology video with a bit of an explanation.
Yeah.
And I think I was tagged maybe 1,000 times on that video, but probably more. And I remember my wife, you know, told me, she's like, Jeremy posted about you. And she's like, check people in the area on Instagram where people tag you. And I saw it. And I was like, okay. And I went and take a look. And I go, okay, he's getting ready for the Olympia, which is cool, you know. He's apologizing. I wish this would have happened sooner to a degree outside, but it wasn't one of those things where I was like in a rush to have a conversation, because everyone says, well, can you at least kind of like have a conversation, get him on the podcast. And I said, I need to be in the right mind space. And I am a person who has and I'm leaning into this a lot right now. And I'm learning this about myself. A lot of the traumas and a lot of even the victories and had trauma built into it, because it was very rough. A lot of those wins, whether it was you, whether it was Phil, whether it was C-Bomb, whether it was Derek, I mean, it doesn't matter. A lot of those, there was so much stress because there were so many hiccups that happened with injuries or torn body parts or whatever it was. And thank God, many of them we got through, right, with all of you guys. But I never really dealt with that emotional trauma. And now that I'm officially retired from elite coaching and trying to evolve into coaching instead of 3 people at one time, trying to share lessons to 3 million people that follow me, I really want people to learn that there's a cost to all of this. And as selfish as my athletes are, because they have to go through it and they have to kind of compartmentalize, as you know, how many times did you have to do things where you couldn't do things with your family, or you couldn't do things with your loved one or your significant other because you're trying to prep, you're trying to do this. There's so many things that you can't do and enjoy your parts of your life because you're sacrificing. And I did the same thing with my family by sacrificing the connection, the connectivity, being present to be able to do those things. And then going out and then coming back and saying, hey, Farron is saying, well, how did the trip go? And I go, you don't want to know. We had some, bad times. And I think that a lot of people think that this coaching thing is really about counting reps and telling people how much chicken to eat or having some magic cycle. And if I would have every single one of you Olympia winners that I've coached for the last 25 sit across from me, I would say it's a lot more different than that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to put it in words, but you literally have to be able to self-sacrifice for your athlete. At least that's what I had to do.
You did. Your whole family did. Yeah.
And
I was talking to Mike about it. Cameron was born 3 months before you signed me, and then the next 6 years, I required so much of your attention and so much of your energy. I remember calling you midnight, pissed off or crying or upset. You having to talk me off the ledge when you got your wife and your sons sitting in the living room waiting for you to get off the phone with me. I'm sorry for that.
No, and I appreciate it. I appreciate, you really making an effort right now. And you have been, so I'm not going to take away from the last several years. It's just that I wasn't ready
I understand.
to have those conversations.
It's happening when it needed to happen, because honestly, if it had happened a few years, or 2 years ago, it wouldn't have been the right time for me either.
Right.
I had to, for me to understand what I put you through, I had to have a family of my own to really understand that. My family is the most important thing to me. My kids are everything to me. So seeing that you're retiring from coaching when you made that post, like, I was genuinely like happy for you, because I know how much it has weighed on you over the years. I remember having a conversation with you in Kuwait about Cameron, about you not feeling like you were there enough, and you were in tears over it. And it sucks. It sucks seeing you like that, because I know how important your family was to you. And I'm happy that you have been able to finally get to a point in your career now that you are able to take the time for yourself and for your family, because they deserve it. You deserve it. And there's still plenty of time, man. Cameron's only 11.
Yeah. Yeah. And the good thing about it is he loves it. And he asks about it, and he's so into it, which is great. And I would love to be a part of that journey, but without the emotional connection that is deep as me coaching was, and even still is. This is not an easy thing for me to reprogram my thought process about, even when you got on stage and I was with C-Bomb backstage, and I know you were getting ready, and I'm trying to look at you, and I'm like, okay, I wonder how he's going to do. And I know I got to go back because I had Hany and Derek still for the finals, and you guys were going at the same time in 2023 as right after Chris went with Classic.
Yep.
And then I'm like, I have to go back, and I'm sitting there going, shit, I really want to go see what Jeremy looks like. I hope he does well, because of the fact that I know that you have a ability to really, really shine because of how your structure is. I mean, you were the standard for many years. And so I'm just like, he doesn't have to win, but just, I hope he looks good. And I didn't get to see it.
Well, I didn't look that good.
Yeah. I mean, I saw you just kind of walk by backstage, and I couldn't see in the light. And I'm like, God, oh God, I wonder what he's going to look like, and I didn't, and I just getting text messages. Everyone's like, hey, what do I eat next? When are you going to come see me? And Chris was done. I'm like, Chris, give him hugs and high fives. Love you, bro. I got to go check on the boys, the open guys. And then they were just calling you guys up, and then I didn't get a chance to look at it. But it was one of those things where, that whole entire weekend was very, very different, because, first Olympia you've done without me, right? Since you started winning. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I knew it wasn't going to be easy.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I had Wadi in my corner for it,
I am too.
He understood the relationship that we had. Wadi's been a friend of mine for years. You know him, Matt. Mm-hmm. He, before every Olympia that I did one, he would be up in my room praying with me the night before. He's been a good friend, never asked much of me, and he cares about me. I needed somebody that could somewhat fill the shoes that you provided for me during those years, as far as the emotional support that went behind it all, because I knew that I can do the dieting, I can do the training. It was just getting over that mental hump of getting back on stage and having somebody, nudging me the whole time, because going into the prep, I wasn't confident at all. I'd been off stage for a long time. Everybody told me the division outgrown me, and that was stuck in my head. And I had people around me telling me I'm still great and I can still hang in there with the guys. And Wadi is the first person to say, call him right now. I'd be like, dude, I think you can still win the Olympia. Mm-hmm. Do I think that? I don't know. But he does. And I needed somebody that believed in me like that, and somebody that can, pick me up when I'm down on myself. And he did a great job of that, just like how he used to. And, a lot of guys, why didn't you go with a bigger name coach or somebody who has more accolades than Wadi? I wasn't looking for that. Right. I wanted somebody that I can trust, and somebody I knew loved me and that cared about me, that would be there with me through the highs and lows. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, Wadi's somebody that I'm able to stay very even with. He's just a super chill guy, and You know, we have a good time together, and I trust him. So I'm glad that we did the prep together.
Yeah, I mean, you literally lived together for 10 weeks, right?
Yeah. We had it locked in. It was up until 2 days out. You know, things started to fall apart. But you know, I had high expectations going into. I thought I was going to win going into Orlando. You know, I really did. I thought I had everything I needed to bring, and you know, it just kind of fell apart.
Orlando, you mean 2023 Olympia?
Yeah, 2023.
Yes. Yeah.
So, you know, it was a different experience, a lot different experience than, you know, walking around with you and being part of Evogen.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Yeah, but the good thing is, when I heard you're working with Wadi, I was like a bit relieved because I knew that he was going to care, right? And he was going to care because, again, coaches, no offense to the rest of the coaches out there, but I know you're not going to be sleeping in between Ariel cuts his kids and what do you call it, and, you know, all in the same room up there, you know, because he's got his system, you know, and he can do what he can do. But when you're working on a whole different level, it's going to be different of what is needed because it's a big gap. You know, it's very similar to when you are going through the process like I did for the Olympia, after the Olympia this year. I was like, okay, well, how is, you know, what's Derek going to do? What's Hany going to do? How am I, you know, what are the needs that they're going to, you know, need? But part of that is coping mechanism, and then being able to make sure that you got to figure out what's best for you when you're going to work with somebody, right? Yeah. Like what's going to happen. Every person has different needs. And I told everybody, like, you guys can come and train with me. I'll be a part of it. It's just that I can't carry the heavy burden of that stress daily that I normally do. I have to reprogram that. So find somebody who can be able to deal with the daily stuff. Any of the gym stuff, I'm here as a trainer. But on the coaching side, with that emotionally charged formula that has been great, been fantastic, but it's just no longer, there's no more juice in the bottle to squeeze. You know, it's gotta change for me.
Do you think you're going to be able to step away from that completely? As much as you have the personal relationships that you have with all of us, or all of them now, you know, they're still friends of yours.
Yeah.
You know, so it's going to be like they're, you know, you care.
Yeah.
So when an issue pops up, you think, they're going to talk to you.
Sure. Yeah. And you know what? I think it's all going to be different depending on the person. I think Hany has a completely different personality than Derek. Hany's been doing it for a very long time. Derek definitely needs to find somebody, and I know that he has, and, you know, gone through this with talking to several coaches, and I said, you need to figure out what's best for you and who you connect with. Then those key elements of what that person's going to coach you on are the most important elements that you need, because some of the emotional stuff that person may not give you or just isn't a part of, you can get those from family. You can get those from other things. You can get, you know, or maybe you've learned to cope with it and now you don't need that person like me to do those things, and it's okay. But so everybody's going to be different with that. But in regards to me personally, it is a 100% turnaround, 180 degrees of where I'm normally doing. Like when I was in Canada a week and a half ago, and normally I'd be glued to my phone just to see if there's anybody that needs anything. Mm-hmm. And so that's the presence where I'm like, everyone's good, man. Everybody knows. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And everybody respects it, man.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
I feel like everybody wants that for you too. You know, we've all seen the work you've put in over the years. Yeah.
And I'm not going to be like abandoning anybody. I'm just there as a second set of eyes. I'm still going to give an opinion. Someone's asking me for it. Want to get workouts in? Let's do workouts. I just want to be more I'm retraining my brain so that I can be able to coach other coaches. So therefore I can get more of the word out of how to do things in a healthier manner, so that you can have kids. You're not going to have long-term organ damage. You're not going to do things, where you're going to have such damage to your body that it's going to hinder you for the rest of your life at whatever level you decide to do this in.
Well, because there's a lot of coaches out there that don't think about that. They just want to get the win.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're the lab rat.
Yeah.
And they don't care. And they're going to experiment. And then they're going to go on to the next one. And they're not going to worry about your blood pressure, your blood work, how you're lifting, your joints, your mental health, all of these things that have to go along with it. And I obsess so much about all of those things that I just took away from everything else that I still need to worry about. And that's why I have to reallocate the focus. But to answer your question, is it going to be easy? No, because I constantly want to go back to that. And I have to go back and be like, okay, no, it's okay. People are all grown-ups, done some amazing things. I'm here if you need me. I'm here if going to the gym. And I want to really try to go into the gym and share my knowledge on this podcast, on my app, on my platforms, and be able to really just say there is a healthier way of bodybuilding. And I think you sharing some of the things that we went through just now and talking about the mental ups and downs and how you can get so supercharged to the point where you want to be physically just violent, and how you have to try to control yourself with that, Jeremy. Now you can sit down and hear that, me talking to you, where before anything that I would say, dude, you were like on it, dude. Like you were like, I don't want to hear this. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
I meant like I was attacking you. Where I was talking to you in the same tone as I'm talking to you right now. But back then you couldn't
handle it. Yeah, I didn't want to hear it.
No. No. And I just feel like if anybody, even one person who's listening to this podcast, can take something away from that, I want to share that. And I want to be able to use your experience for them, because they truly love this sport just as much as you and I. And I feel like even people who aren't in the sport, who are into anything that's extreme or any high level person who wants to compete at any sport, has to sacrifice. And it can get very unhealthy physically and emotionally. I mean, even financially, where people sleep in the car, people go out of their way to do weird shit to try to make the money to do what is part of their dream. Do you have anything else you can share on that side? Because I really feel like, do you think counseling, because again,
yeah, I mean, you gotta, if things are falling apart on you, and you can feel it, there's no peace within, and you don't have to live that way. I've realized that. Like, I lived without peace for so long. I always felt like I was fighting life, always trying to keep my head above water. No matter how good things were for me, no matter how much money was coming in, no matter any of those materialistic things, I was always battling. And we're meant to have peace in our lives. There's meant to be peace. If you aren't having that peace, you need to take a step back and figure out what that causes and where the root of the issue is coming from. And oftentimes it's coming from within. And being able to take a step back and look in the mirror and call yourself out on the bullshit. And it's really hard to do, especially when I was as egotistical as I was and as narcissistic as I was. It's hard to put the blame on yourself when you're so busy pointing fingers at other people. And, it took me a long time to be able to step back and stop blaming others, to figure out why things happened to me the way they happened to me. It was realizing what I did to cause the things that had happened, or to cause certain people to treat me a certain way or say something about me. And it took away the hate, took away the anger. I hated a lot of people for so many years. I lived with so much hate in my heart that it was impossible to keep my head above water, because I was so filled with rage all the time. And that's what the devil wants us to do. He wants us to fixate on these negative things. He wants us to fixate on us not being good enough. And he wants us to point and blame and not be able to fix us from within, because You know, that's what he wants. He wants to dig us a deeper and deeper and deeper hole. And that's where he gets his satisfaction from. And I realized that, and I wasn't going to give in to the enemy anymore. And I needed to fix the issue. And it came back to me understanding what I did to cause the things that have happened instead of pointing it at everybody else. Yeah, I had some bad people in my life, yeah, but I also allowed those people in my life, and I allowed them to influence my decision making. And that falls back on me, not them.
I think a lot of people are very granular when it comes to wanting to know. And I am going to give you guys a little bit of insight on exactly how things ended because, number one, many asked. Number two, the ones that don't know are going to want to be like, what exactly happened? And so as Jeremy and I were competing through in 2018, he had just was getting ready for the Olympia, but 2017 was, I believe, our fourth Olympia win, right? Jeremy ended up doing, I think it was for charity.
Yeah, through a charity event, yeah, in October 2018, 17. I tore my pec.
He wanted to do a charity bench press contest. And I don't know if it was a contest. Was it a contest? Or
I held a big event and I had the Strength Cartel come out and they did the deadlift, the bench press, and we were raising money. We had a bunch of sponsors chip in for every pound.
Right.
And I remember I called you the night before, told you about it.
Yeah. No, you told me about it about a week or two before. And then I said, you're not doing it yourself, right? And you're like, no, I'm going to be a part of it too. And I said, Jeremy, there's a reason why I don't like you having none of my athletes I like to bench press. Because if you go in there and you try to go in there and hit some kind of crazy heavy max, chances are that's where the number one pec tear exercise is flat barbell press. So
you told me that my whole career,
yeah,
my entire career from start to end.
And
that's why when I did it, I'm like, fuck, he's right again.
and I even called you the night before and I said, look, 225, 275, you're fine. Try not to go heavier than that. Maybe do some reps with that, something like that point if you really, really need to do it. But don't go heavier than that. And you said, I'm fine, I'm good. And it was like, you're Superman. You wanted to be like, I'm going to prove that I'm a man. It's okay. You don't have to tell me what to do, Dad. I'm going to go ahead and do it. And then the next day, you called me. And what'd you do?
Tore my pec. Yeah.
How much weight did you use?
405.
There you go. Okay. So you put 400 pounds on, tore your pec. And you called me and you're like, just completely shattered, right? Just like.
I'm embarrassed too. Yeah.
And again, instead of me saying, I told you so, I just said, obviously, we need to figure out how bad it is. We need to get with a surgeon. We got to see, is it rolling up? How bad is it? Thing? Just throw ice on there, get ice on it. Let's get you to an orthopedic surgeon. And then what happened?
I had surgery. Yeah, had surgery, and we weren't planning on competing that year at all. We were going to take it off. And then I think I just got bored. And things I kind of just started having a good time. I got distracted and I needed something to keep me structured. So we decided to jump back into a prep. I had started working out again. I put some size back on. I remember I was outside of a supplement shop and I posted a picture on Instagram. You called me like, "Is that what you look like? Is that what you look like right now?" I said, "Yeah." You're like, I think we can pull this off. We were like 14 weeks out.
Right.
You're like, I think we can pull this off. And I remember I got excited. I go, if you tell me we're doing Olympia, we're fucking doing it.
Right.
And then you said, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we pulled it together pretty good.
Yeah.
I looked pretty good going in. It just wasn't the same as it was the year before.
Yeah.
I didn't have a full off season, and I started prep at like 170 pounds, 14 weeks out, and ended up on stage at 180. We grew into the show, but it just wasn't enough to
Be able to be like you were.
Yeah. And then not only that, all the distractions during my Olympia prep, I was still trying to live that rock star lifestyle. I was partying on the weekends and not sleeping and yeah, different girl every other night. It was just busy and distracted and not focused on being the Olympia champion and doing what was necessary to win.
Yeah.
And that reflected on stage. And I remember every single Olympia, I'd take off my shirt backstage and everybody like, fuck, Jeremy won.
Right.
Jeremy won. That year it didn't happen. I remember Brandon Hendrickson took off his shirt. I'm like, well, that was a fun ride.
Yeah.
That's over. And, you know, I just didn't know how to handle it after that. I thought like the first couple of days after Olympia, I was taking it pretty well. I was handling it pretty well. And then, you know, I just, I think I was embarrassed too for losing. And then not really knowing what was next, even though I had everything set up to be successful.
Yep.
You know, we had an agreement that was going to make sure that I was taken care of for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And had some influence from some other people that I shouldn't have listened to. And like I said, I'm not blaming them, but I blame myself for listening to some bad advice. And I self-sabotaged the whole thing. And we ended up going to LA Fit Expo. You had just signed Andre Dayu because I told you to. And I got really jealous of that. I saw you start investing some time into him. And I was like, shit, he's trying to replace me. And that wasn't the case. It was me putting that all on my head.
Yeah.
And I fixated on that, kept partying. And 2019 was a party year for me, for sure. You know, I hardly remember very much of it, just the emotional drama I went through. I remember all the traumatic stuff. You know, I do remember the good times. I met my wife at that time, and, you know, she was I'm surprised she stayed with me during that time, but I'm very grateful she did. And, you know, I'm different now, but we ended up going to LA Fit Expo. We met for lunch. I remember we met for lunch somewhere.
Yep.
I don't remember. I think I was pissed off about Andre or something. Yeah. And I remember I said, you know, fuck this, I'm done. I got up and walked out. You followed me outside. I got in my car and I skirted off out of there, burning out. Joe called me. He was like, you need to get your ass back here. I was like, no, fuck this, I'm done. And I thought I could do it on my own. You know, I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I was making a ton of money at the time and I was doing good, and I thought that I could branch off and do my own thing. And, you know, I might have been able to if my head was on straighter, but it wasn't, and I just ended up, you know, one thing after another in 2019. Not only that, but, you know, I had pissed off enough people with big enough followings to come together and really make sure that, you know, things came to a halt for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think in a nutshell, it was a really bad advice for you, but looking back at it, you know, even the person that was giving you the advice ended up going to prison 6 months after that whole quote unquote negotiation, and we were trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. I'm sad to say that guy had me wrapped around his finger. You know, I had everybody in my corner telling me to stay away from that guy, including you, my parents, everybody. But, you know, I was blinded by the flashiness of all the things that were told to me about what could have been, and the cars, the money, and this lifestyle. And it was all a facade by
The
this
rented
guy.
cars.
I didn't rent my Lambo. I bought that.
No,
but
I'm talking about the rented cars.
him.
Yes,
Yeah.
that he was trying to show you success that were rented.
Yeah. And I remember when I first met him, I mean, it should have been red flag, but at the same time, I was like, what, 25? I'd never seen money like that before. He's like, you got to fake it till you make it. You don't do that. You don't
Is that
do
what he said?
Yeah.
That's what he said.
He said that to me.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that's what I said. I said, that's a fake it till you make it kind of attitude.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not a proven model. The big booths, you know, you had the clothing line. Hira. Very cool clothing line.
Yeah.
You had left LiftFit. You had, I think you had VQ maybe at the time.
I had a bunch of sponsors at the time.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 different clothing companies I was sponsored by.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fathers and Sons.
Riderwear. Yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of different things. And then you shut all of them off, or most of them, and then to do this gig. And the thing that I told you, and this is one of those aha moments, because I said, look, I think a lot of this is just a lot of window dressing. And it's just fluff, because big booth, doing this, doing that, we're doing big things, but you weren't getting paid. And then what ended up happening was I said, you're losing opportunity here because you're turning off what was really paying you. And you ended up not taking a check for what, 2 years?
Yeah, I never made a penny from my clothing company. All the money was embezzled out of it. I put all the money down for that clothing company to get started. And when the way it actually broke down was when it was tax season, I needed the P&L for our business to give to my accountants, and it was like pulling teeth trying to get that. And when I finally got the P&L and balance sheet, I noticed an owner's draw every single month on it. I was like, hey, I thought we weren't paying ourselves. He goes, oh, well, I'm running everything, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, that's not what we discussed. Why are you getting a check and I'm not?
Right.
And then amongst a bunch of other things I gave money to,
Investment.
Yeah, I had 6 houses I bought that were wiped out from underneath me, and a lot of things.
Yeah, because you wrote a check for that on top of the opportunity loss of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then
we did $2 million in sales that first year at the clothing company.
Right.
I didn't see a penny of it.
Right.
Yeah. It's a tough pill to swallow. It really was, but can't go back in time.
Right.
I was mad about it for a long time. It was up until, year, 2 years ago that I've been able to get over it. It's what's gone is gone, and all I can do, if I stay fixated on this, I'm not going to be able to move forward.
Right.
It's being able to let go of the past and let go of your regrets. And if you stay fixated on those, you're never going to move forward. And that's why I stayed stagnant for 2 or 3 years until I got my shit back together in 2022. Got back in the gym, got my eyes fixed on Olympia again, and I realized, I had spent all of my 20s. I was really good in school. I was a good student. I went to UC Davis my first year, and then I dropped out of there to bodybuild. I could have been a doctor. I studied, biology at UC Davis. I could have spent my whole 20s studying something, but instead, I spent my whole 20s building a brand in bodybuilding. So it's like somebody going through getting their doctorate and then deciding they don't want to be a doctor in their 30s. They just wasted all that time. So for me, I needed to get back to what I knew and what I knew could produce. So that's why I got myself back on stage, because I needed to provide for my family. And, through that time, I was able to, evolve and grow and show the world that I am a different person than I was before. And, slowly companies started coming back around. And, now I'm back to a point where I have
because you were with a lot of companies.
A lot of supplement companies. Supplement companies.
Yeah.
A lot of supplement companies who didn't want anything to do with me, especially here in the States after what happened with, Evogen, and then, shortly after with Steel, how that was public when everything had dropped, Steel dropped me, when all those allegations came out. So it was very public, and a lot of companies stayed away from me. I had international deals that, they were still okay with me coming out. I was still very popular internationally. But dealing with an international company is, for anybody that is an athlete, it's difficult to deal with an international company, especially collecting your money. You don't have any leverage with those companies where you're going to sue somebody if they don't pay you and for $10,000 or $15,000 a month and go travel overseas to fight them in court. It doesn't make sense. You can't do nothing about it. It's not worth it. So a lot of those, companies aren't up to par, and they just fell apart. So fortunately, I signed with Gap last year or earlier this year, and it's been good. I'm very happy with them, very grateful for the opportunity. And, I have my other sponsors as well that have stuck with me. VQ re-signed me in 2022. I messaged them like, hey, I'm in a really bad spot. I'm trying to pull myself out of this. I need some help. And they're gracious enough to bring me back on board and help me. I'm very thankful for Vanquish, because if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I would have been able to get back on my feet or put food on the table for my family. And that was a little bit of boost, a little bit of confidence that they gave me to keep going. And, I've been able to rebuild a lot in the past year and a half to a point where, my family and I we're doing well, and I have plans for the future. I'm going to be opening a gym in Roseville.
Yeah, you told me that last night.
I'm working with Skelcore, a great company out of Miami. Mike Rattini, the owner of Gold's, franchise owner of Gold's in North Carolina, has been a mentor of mine with the gym business, and he's helped me out a lot. And it's just the transition. I'm getting older. I'm 34. I don't know. I've said this is going to be my last year getting on stage, which more than likely it is. My body's beat up. It's not the same as it used to be. It's not as fun training anymore because of the injuries and
what's hurting on you now?
everything.
shoulders.
Everything, honey. You know, getting out of bed in the morning, my lower back, it takes me forever to get loosened up. My ruptured my Achilles twice this year. You know, my legs are probably never going to be the same. It's messed my hips up, my knees up, which in turn has messed my lower back up even more.
How'd you tear your Achilles?
I was filming content. I took one wrong step. Went to run. Just took one step and snap. And then I had surgery. And then 2 weeks after my first surgery, I took my daughter to the park. I was on my knee scooter, and she kind of took off towards the street. So I went after her, I hit a piece of bark on my knee scooter, and it tipped me over. And I was in my walking boot, and it landed on it and just erupted on me again.
And then had to go back and get it.
I had to go back in and get surgery. I'm 6.5 months post-op right now, and it's getting a lot better. Saw Drake Greenlaw played last night for the Niners, 10 months after his Achilles injury at the Super Bowl last year. So that was a boost in confidence for myself. Aaron Rodgers came back last year after his Achilles tear.
Yeah.
Played like shit this year, but it's all right.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just like right now the biggest issue is like, you know, we were trying to do some curls. You showed me the new machines, and I was doing some curls, and you know, I got this brachialis issue that I've been dealing with, and I can hardly grip anything to, you know, curl, kicking way up to my shoulder. It just makes it really difficult to go in the gym and enjoy it as much as I used to when I go in there and just train balls to the wall like an animal.
Right.
You know, we used to get after it.
Yes.
And nothing hurt. I just felt good and just trained fucking hard.
Super hard.
And I loved it. I loved it so much. Just getting that pump and squeezing and flexing, just veins popping everywhere. When I squeeze and flex now, it hurts. It don't feel the same. So,
Does anybody ever tell you about the old videos?
Oh, yeah. I mean, people
like-
will talk about all, I still get people, hey, I saw your FST7 video. I'm like, that was like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a nice set of hair. You know, I got hair like you now.
What's going on, man? You gonna go to Turkey? You gonna do the hair transplant?
Dude, I've been going the Hany Rambod look. You haven't seen me with a shaved head before.
No.
So
no.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna have to call Chris and see how his hair turned out. But
I saw Chris's last week. I think he got a little bit of a touch up on it, but all in all, him, Ian, all the guys that I know that have done it. Then Hottie just did it. I don't know how that came out because it's just starting to come back.
Yeah.
You can't train for a while, which
That's what I
sucks.
heard,
yeah, because you know they don't want the trauma of all the blood flow and everything else to disrupt the new hair implant. But it's definitely a lot of people are doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it. They've offered me to come out there. I told them no.
Maybe we should both go.
Maybe
we should both go. I'll get.
I heard they do beards. We can get some chest hair.
Back hair.
Do you know where they take the hair to do the beard?
No.
From the taint.
No.
Yeah. No, I'm just messing.
I was like, what? I was like, dude,
How do
those
you think-
curlies.
You get it nice and coarse. Yeah.
Yeah, the little curlies.
It
Oh,
smells a
man.
little funny, but
That's too much. Yeah, they would have to transplant my back hair into my head if I was going to be able to find enough hair. To be able to do
maybe,
that,
when
but-
I get some time, you know, it's hard to travel with the kids. You know, I don't want to leave my wife at home with a 3-year-old and a 10-week-old baby. When I get some time, you know, my wife doesn't mind my hair, so
Yeah.
just the guys on social media and half of India, they don't like it.
Yeah, they don't. The international guys are the ones. Even sometimes, once in a blue moon. That's not often now, but I remember like 3, 4, or 5 years ago. It was a lot of people would come in there and like, "Oh, what are you doing, baldy? And why are you bald?" And I'm just like, "It's called genetics, man."
Yeah, right.
And that's it.
You should have stopped taking steroids. My dad has no hair. Dude.
Yeah.
Like, what do you? I don't think it was inevitable.
No, it's genetic
But,
at that point. But you know, look. It sounds like you got a lot of things going for you now. It's good. I think the number one thing is your family, and I think that, and I actually said that when everything went sideways. I said when Jeremy ends up having a family, I think that's the biggest thing that creates perspective for people.
Yeah.
You know, when you get married is one thing, but when you have a child, it creates another. And now you have a girl and a boy.
Yeah.
So that's
I think having a girl helped a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
girl dad.
Yeah. She's got me wrapped around her fingers. A soft spot in my heart for that little one. She drives me insane, but I love her so damn much. She's like a little mini me, so I know I got my hands full in the future. She's going to be absolutely beautiful. She looks anything like her mom. She's going to be absolutely beautiful. And it's going to, you know, her being a teenager, getting all the boys ready. We're going to pull the bad boys scene on her first date. You seen that?
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to be like cleaning guns and doing all that stuff. That's
But,
it.
you know, it's having kids it's changed everything. You know, like I don't go out anymore. Like I went out to a comedy club with my buddy Dave about a month ago, and it's the first time I've gone out with the guys or the guy in years. You know, it was fun, but at the same time, I'd rather spend my Friday, Saturday night hanging out with my kids and watching a movie on the couch. That's where my joy comes from, is being with them.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. It's crazy how much you can love somebody when you have a child of your own. It's such a different kind of love. You know, it's special.
Yeah.
It really
and
is.
you've got so much more to go. Are you going to have any more?
I'm thinking about it.
Maybe one more.
Maybe
Yeah.
one more. I wouldn't mind it. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah. Again,
I haven't stopped cleaning up the house. My wife and I haven't stopped cleaning up the house since number 2's been here, because my daughter is just running around all the time.
because your boy's 10 weeks now, right?
He's 10 weeks old. My wife's always holding him, so I've been having a little bigger responsibility with my daughter, and you know, she's at the age now where she just always wants to do something.
Yeah.
Dad, let's go to the park. Dad, let's go to the arcade.
Yeah.
Dad, all day long, and I love it. But you know, it's another thing with competing. You know, that's why I think this is going to be it after this year, because it just takes away too much. You know, I went to prep in Denver last year. Being away from them for 10 weeks was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard, and you know, it goes by so quick too. You know, even the first 4 weeks of my son being born, we had a lot going on. You know, I've been negotiating the gym lease and dealing with the city, and then we also had to move houses like 3 weeks after he was born. And then I tried, you know, starting a prep for the Arnold, which I failed miserably at this last 6 weeks. You know, the holidays coming around.
Yeah.
It's been a lot, and I don't want to miss 10 weeks or 12 weeks again, because we don't get that back, especially at this age. You know, my son is literally tripled in size since he's been born. He's a 16-pound, 10-week-old baby. I showed you a picture last night. He's like my little Buddha.
Yeah, he is. He looks good. Yeah,
my little
he's so
Jolly.
cute.
He's so cute, but he's just, it goes by quick. And since he's been born, my daughter just looks so much older and so much bigger to me. And it's gonna, you know how it is.
I know how
it
it is.
is.
Cam's 11 and he
blink and
looks
she's
like
gonna
he's
be a teenager.
25. He looks like,
Yeah.
you know.
So it's just my values are different. You know, when I was in my 20s, single or not married, it was different. You know, I was just all about myself, and that was my priority, was Olympia and making sure that I was taken care of. Now, you know, I'm 4th on the list of who's important.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a different mindset. It's a very, very big change. Well, I'm glad things are going much better. You know, I'm glad we were able to connect last night, because again, it was super random.
Yeah.
Really random. And I was talking to Nick about it, and I think when we saw each other in 2023 and you were getting ready to just do the check-ins, I tried to make it a point when I saw you, pull you aside. Nick, I said, Jeremy, come here real quick. And I know I was doing the check-ins with Chris at the time. And then you guys were coming in, and I just wanted you to make sure that you knew we're good. I saw the video. We'll talk later at some point. But we're going to run into each other during the entire weekend. And I don't want it to be awkward, because I know anybody would have anxiety for a show like this, especially a reigning Olympia champion from several years ago, Olympia champion that is now trying to come back. Especially, I know you. And I know it was going to be hard, right? So, again, trying to be as empathetic as possible and understanding. When I saw you during the check-ins, I was like, we're good. Good
And
luck.
I appreciated that a lot. It took a lot of pressure off me, for sure, because I knew I was going to see you out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to be some kind of animosity, or for you to think that I feel or think a certain way about you, because at that point it was water under the bridge. I know you were in a bad spot when you said a lot of things that you were just in an area of the time you were hurt because of the fact that you didn't know what was going on, what was going to happen next. And I knew all that shit going on. Unfortunately, you didn't, and that's why it happened. But I was like, let me do whatever I can to try to soothe this guy, give him the ability to try to reduce his anxiety before he's trying to go back on that stage. And then when it's the right time, we're going to run into each other and have a conversation. Yeah. And that was a year later, which was literally last night.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, yeah, like, where's your gym? And I said, it's 8 minutes up the road. If you want to come by, come by. Yeah. And I said, want to do a podcast? And you're like, today? I was like, yeah, let's do it today. Why not? You're here.
Yeah.
And again, I'm in a different place too. I'm in a completely different place. So congratulations on the family. I'm so glad your mom and dad are doing well.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see them at some point, because I'm sure that we'll see them at the next show.
Yeah.
When you get back on stage. And I know that just for good old time's sake, we got to go train.
Let's do it, man.
So guys, if this video comes out before the training session, then make sure you go check out the training session. I know in the comments below, if there's anything else you guys want to know, do the best you can to be able to answer those questions. Obviously, we'll put Jeremy's page on there. I know that a lot of you guys already follow him, but it's just in case if you don't, he'll be on the bottom of the comments. And again, it's good to get past things. I think that it's really good. This is a life lessons for me too, as well, and just a healing process for me, because as I go back and relive those moments, really doing what I'm trying to do is focus on all of those positive moments and using any of those hurdles that we went through as just teaching moments for both of us. So
we'll have to do another podcast where we talk about the highlights of our relationship too, and all the good times that we did have.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of great times, man. Like I said, some of my best memories are traveling around the world with Evogen and doing the things we did. I'll never forget all three of us getting our dish dashes in Kuwait, me, you, and Nick, walking around the outdoor market.
Yep.
Yeah. It was good times sitting around a table or.
I wore it on the plane.
Huh?
Do you remember I wore it on the plane?
Yeah. Oh, and you wouldn't, the laptop thing. You remember they were trying to take your laptop and you wouldn't let them take your laptop? But just give them your fucking laptop, honey.
I'm like, they're not taking my laptop. That's it. But it was one of those things. We got to dig up the picture, but it was, yeah, you're right. There was a lot of really cool times that when we were going all around the world. Even India was super cool.
Yeah, that first India trip, that was a culture shock, but we had a good time. You always made it fun.
Yeah.
A lot of laughs.
Yeah. Nobody did the concierge service like I did. No one can compete with me when it came to being able to get all of those cool trips. Yeah. Because what we did was we really did a lot of team building when it got together. Those nights, those dinners, all of those other things. But you're right. We'll definitely go back and relive some of those and tell some really good stories. Yeah. And some of the stuff that we went through, because it was an amazing time.
It was. And I'm very grateful for all those moments, and I'm grateful for you having me back at this table with you. And I love you, man. I always will. I appreciate you. I love your family, and cheers to the future, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. God bless you. God bless your family, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah,
Hany Rambod, 4-time Olympia men's physique champion Jeremy Buendia, and that's the truth.